Now let me step back from the technical things and talk to you about the experience in Rome. Because I think this was a watershed experience, what just happened over the story of Brother Andre. First of all, we all know different bits and pieces of this magnificent story. I happen to love Brother Andre. I went there when I was 16 years old in Montreal as a French student, and my French teacher took me to his tomb. And seeing this tomb in this magnificent mausoleum-style church, this huge thing on the hill, then reading about this wonder man, and I kind of adopted Brother Andre, and for the next 37 years, including this year, I went back repeatedly to the oratory. Something was there, and each time I went, I was stunned by the array of people that were praying in the area of the tomb. Somehow, his message got out. Say what you wish about the practice of faith in Quebec. Say what you wish about the church and selling off churches in Montreal, and the critics will fill you with all kinds of data. But each time I've gone to there was Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs praying at the tomb of Brother Andre. When I was appointed to do the World Youth Day on May the 1st, 1999, I received a phone call at noon. And the only time I've ever done something crazy is as I told my secretary, I'm leaving for the afternoon. She said, Father, you always have your life planned. Where are you going? I'm going to Montreal. She said, Father, are you sick? I said, no, I'm going to Union Station. I'm going to Montreal. Took the train at 3 o'clock, arrived there about 8 o'clock, went to the oratory, asked the Holy Cross to let me in, and I was able to spend the night there. And I placed the World Youth Day in his hands. I said, I'm scared. This is huge. You got to open up doors. He did. When it was over, I went back to thank him. When I was appointed to Salt+Light, I said, open doors and open television sets, get me in the homes. We can't do this. And so what we decided to do at the time of his canonization was we would make the documentary on his life. To tell the story of how this little man who was illiterate, unable to read, who was practically sent away. I mean, he used the line, when I entered this congregation, my superiors showed me the door. And they did. And he stayed there for 40 years. And he was a masterful communicator in what he did. And he communicated by engaging, by touching, and by healing. We made a very beautiful movie on him, which we premiered on the eve of the canonization at a theater in Vatican City. Bishops of Canada asked me to handle all of the media surrounding this for them in Rome. 2 weeks before the canonization, Radio-Canada, Société Radio-Canada, issued or put on a scathing 1-hour program on the sexual abuse that took place at Collège Notre-Dame in Montreal. The hype they used for this was nothing short of appalling and disgusting, including zeroing in on the door, the porter's lodge, and using such vitriolic language of this congregation, Holy Cross, trying to produce a saint through all of this. It enraged people in Quebec, it enraged the bishops, it enraged ordinary people who have no religious sensitivity. This was kind of like the underlying story, if you like, the leitmotif that caused a lot of these journalists to come to Rome. This is what I had to deal with in Rome. It was quite the experience. They sent over some comedy teams from CBC French to get accreditation from the Holy See to cover the canonization. We turned them down. We had a joint effort working together with the Holy See Press Office, with Vatican Television, with Vatican Radio, with L'Osservatore Romano, with the Canadian bishops, with the Generalate of Holy Cross, Salt+Light Television. And the requests went through me, and we fielded them and dealt with the people. One by one, very clearly repeating the same story. This has nothing to do with the story of Brother Andre. Stick with Brother Andre. And then I took the different ones that were respectful into the Vatican, into interviews, interviewing the Miracle Commission, interviewing this one, interviewing that one. And then, towards the Wednesday of the week before the canonization, some shifts started to happen. Some of these journalists, they said, this is a moving story. So you're darn right it is. CTV sent over their international film crew from the Middle East to cover this. I won't tell you the man's name. I don't want to embarrass him. He was their chief anchor person, a wonderful man. And as we went through this for 3 days, on the eve of the canonization, I was in St. Peter's Square looking up at the banner and praying before the banner. The young guy said to me, the anchor person, he said, you know, this is very moving. He said, we're not asking the right questions. And then he said to me, I'm an orphan. I was given up by my family. I was adopted by another family, and I lived in Montreal under the shadow of that church. And I had to come here to find out his story. The morning of the canonization, to have a lot of them on the roof and everything else looking down, and sometimes a little mark of success or penetration is when they start to cry. And especially some of the women that were there, they came armed. And suddenly they see this story being told of this little helpless guy who represents everybody. And somehow Brother Andre communicated beyond the Catholic Church. He reached out to everybody then, and what struck me so powerfully in Rome was among the 5,500 Canadians who were there, and the 8,500 Australians who came for Blessed Mary MacKillop, St. Mary MacKillop, many of the Canadians had pictures ripped out of their family photo albums, or those plastic pages, with pictures of Brother Andre with their parents, their father, their mother, Brother Andre in their house, some people from London having Brother Andre right near here on vacation. All of these photos. Like this was real. This was incredible. Now the mood at the canonization was rather somber and sullen in the current way of things with liturgy in Rome. So it was very necessary for people to have some way of showing their delight. They don't encourage applause anymore at these things like they did under John Paul. So it was the next morning that the full stops were pulled out. Another one of my favorite pastors in the country, like your bishop, is Cardinal Turcotte. He says it like it is. He's a darn good, practical, earthy man. So is his language sometimes. Cardinal Turcotte preached a homily at the Mass of Thanksgiving in Rome the following morning. Some of you watch it at Salt+Light, you told me in the corridor. We televised the whole thing. It was in the Basilica of Sant'Andrea della Valle. We filled the side with 2,500 people in the church, another 1,000 people outside. We put all the journalists up in the front. And a lot of them are saying, are these people happy or what? Look what's going on yesterday. It was quiet and everything else, I didn't watch. Cardinal Turcotte got up and he's able to summarize things and communicate brilliantly. He started out by saying, when Pope Paul VI declared him venerable in 1978, c'était la médaille de bronze, it was the bronze medal. And when John Paul II declared him blessed in 1982, here in this square, c'était la médaille d'argent, was the silver medal. Mais mes chers amis, mes chères sœurs et frères, Sunday he won gold. And it was 2 minutes of a standing ovation. Some of the Quebec Radio-Canada people that were there were so deeply moved by that. And they came over, some of the real hostile ones, they came over afterwards and said, that's it. And I said, that's it. You just heard it right there. This is not a lofty theological treatise. It was not some kind of a profound statement or a page out of the catechism or a bishop's statement. Very simple images. The day before he said, Brother Andre was the Maurice Richard of the church, you know. And the following day, it was that. And Saturday, this past Saturday, was the pièce de résistance, because the Olympic Stadium in Montreal was filled, 50,000 people, and then all of the media of Quebec, the so-called godless society. But Saturday, God was there. Remember the movie Jésus de Montréal, Jesus of Montreal? Saturday I felt the presence of Jesus of Montreal. It was the poor, the little ones, the wheelchairs, the kids, trains and buses, like the funeral. The funeral, 1 million people. Saturday was something similar. It was a magnificent, simple, beautiful celebration. We were up in the booths there with our television crew, watching all this, and all the television people were there, and I must say there were very few dry eyes on the ring that I was in. Because the Cardinal did it again, the communicator. He spoke so beautifully about Brother Andre. And at the end, he spoke to Brother Andre. He was interrupted 8 times in his homily with applause. And at the end, he just said, and now, Frère Andre, Saint Frère Andre, no, I want to speak to you. You said before you died that when you would die, you'd be much more powerful in heaven to help us out. Now I ask you to keep your promise. And he went on with a whole list of requests. It was truly beautiful. And at the end, they carried the fragments of his heart. The members of his family carried the fragments of his heart through the stadium. That was communication in the service of truth. It communicated to the church, but it communicated far beyond the church. Symbols, relics, all those things that people find strange. The theme of the liturgy happened to be Un cœur vivant parmi nous, a living heart among us. And it really was a wonderful experience. And I think we learned that when we do all of this stuff together, working with the secular media rather than condemning them, engaging those who are difficult, uniting the forces together, and recognizing the moving, powerful stories that we have. Brother Andre, Father Saint Andre now, should be one of the other models of communication. I feel comfortable in saying this because he didn't go to media school either. He didn't study television. He didn't study film techniques. But it's one of the best stories we have going in this country at present. And it needs to be told over and over again. What did he do? He was a doorkeeper. He spent his life opening the door. What are we doing sometimes? We spend our lives closing the door, establishing all kinds of boundaries, regulations, and rules about who can't be with us. I suggest at times we look at these figures that God raises up at special moments in history when we think things are dying. They're far from dead. Brother Andre teaches us to open the doors. The churches, the schools, the homes, the institutions, the parishes, everything. Because we never know who might show up to seek healing. And the miracle will continue through us.